kind of have it available for customers if they.
Boa tarde novamente.
So good afternoon, everyone. So challenges in proving the safety and efficacy of implants is our next subject. The conversation will be conducted by Priscilla Consigliero of the General Management of Technology, Medical Device Technology with ANVISA. Welcome, Priscilla. Our panelist to talk about this is Mr. Helmut Link, Managing Director and President at Waldemar Link from Germany. Welcome to the stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, presidents from ANVISA and from ANVISA, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me. And yeah, I like to give you my presentation. Maybe it gives you some ideas also for the Brazilian regulatory.
Boa tarde. É prazer agradecer ao
Good afternoon. We would like to thank Dr. Madeira, Dr. Sergio with ABRAIDI. I'm going to moderate this important presentation that will be conducted by Professor Helmut Link. I would like to summarize quickly because Dr. Helmut Link's summary is quite long. Dr. Helmut Link is the owner and director of Waldemar Link, and he is also a CEO of the Waldemar Link Group. He has a personal history in the orthopedics segment, and he participated in the development of the first prosthetics in a German hospital. In 1972, he launched his own plant, and from there on, the Link Group developed and expanded throughout the world. They have several branches and over 1,000 employees working with him. He continued to develop prosthetics, and today he is involved in the development of customized prosthetics, orthopedic prosthetics. So he's going to talk about the advances and challenges regarding safety and efficacy of orthopedic prosthetics, and that's going to contribute a lot to our learnings.
The rare species which still owns his company. And as such, I'm involved in the whole business, in the whole setup, and also, of course, in the regulatory. Before I start this presentation, I like to give you some of my experience when I first came across total joint prosthesis. I'm one of the older generations, and I started the business in the 60s. I learned my business as a surgical instrument maker, and my father then sent me to the US to see how business is done in America. And when I came back, I came across the first total joints. Here you see me in 1964. That's me, that's my father. And so I entered his office, and he had a big oak desk. He put a drawer, and he took a box from Brazil cigars. and opened it up and said to me, this is what we make for Professor Buchholz. And what I saw were hollow components like cups. And I thought, ashtrays. So I said to my father, okay, we make ashtrays? No, he said, we make acetabular caps from polyethylene. Next day, I went to the hospital, the St. George Hospital in Germany, and I saw how they implanted in 1964 the total joints. Buchholz used the Moore prosthesis for the femur and used our produce the acetabular cap. You see it here on the table. Now, the acetabular caps were not gamma sterilized. At that time, it was no gamma sterilization. So they were put in a bowl with a disinfectant for 24 hours. And then they were taken out and rinsed with distilled water. The cement, the bone cement, came from a bottle with powder, the polymer, and a bottle with the liquid, the monomer. So they took the powder, they took the monomer, and they mixed it. And that was autosterile. Autosterile because it generated heat. So they told me the heat sterilizes it. So that was how the original joint prostheses were implanted. The first joint prosthesis Buchholz implanted in Germany was in November 1963. Okay, now let's go to the topic. First, a disclaimer. The content of this presentation is solely based on our experience at Waldemar Link, which we have made in recent years in order to submit and approve products of medical devices with ANVISA and other regulatory authorities. They do not reflect any publication or study results, and we do not claim a complete overview. We not claim a complete overview of all possible submission experiences with ANVISA. Who are we? We are an owner-managed company with a long history, 1963 in implants, in the field of joint implants. Worldwide operating with implant systems and approvals in numerous countries. Many years of experience in the field of medical device registrations. Subsidiary in Link Brazil on site as an importer and contract to ANVISA. What kind of medical devices do we produce? Mainly orthopedic bone and joint replacements and osteosynthesis implants. Portfolio includes device for hip, knee, shoulder, and respective instruments. Class 1 devices, reusable surgical instruments, as well as 2B and Class 3 devices. What we use, metals, polymeric materials, several coatings, and we do also EBM machining. How important is the registration of our medical devices in Brazil? To make it short, very important. CE market is our focus, of course. We are a European company, so mainly our main markets are in Europe. Brazil is an attractive and desirable market for orthopedic implants. It's a big market. It has a high priority for us. Within the regulatory affairs team, which we have 13 employees, 3 engineers take care of the registration in Brazil. regular meetings with the Brazilian subsidiary to plan and coordinate regular activities and submission. As a comparison, for the US, we have 4 engineers, and for China, we have 3 engineers. A Brazilian registration can facilitate further approvals. That's another point why it's so important. Further approvals, mainly in South American countries. A number of manufacturers shy away from the effort of obtaining regulatory approval due to some difficulties of estimating success. Manufacturers have to comply with many regulatory requirements worldwide. However, there are still many country-specific requirements. ANVISA, as one of the largest authorities, could contribute to standardization in the approval process. I'm very happy that I recognize that ANVISA is working in the MDSAP program, which is a standardization of worldwide regulatory affairs. And this would help not only the regulatory institutions, but also the manufacturers to make things easier to standardize procedures, easier to understand between each other what's going on, and easier also to accept other approvals. GMP certification by ANVISA is a good accomplishment and positive sign internationally. In terms of complexity and individuality, approval in Brazil is more challenging than EU and USA. There is a little lack of publicly available information. The approval of innovation is based too strong on applicable standards. Nothing against standards, but there are sometimes new technologies where standards are just not there. And then we need to discuss engineer of regulatory with engineer of manufacturer. Is this product safe and efficient for the patients, for the population? Manufacturers have only limited orientation of how to handle such situations. Now, our in-house philosophy and future view. Challenges of the safety and efficiency of orthopedic implants and their durable function in patients are defined by the surgeon, the surgeon's competency, the patient's compliance, and the implant quality. And here again, the implant quality is basically a matter of design, material finish, and most importantly, the manufacturer's ethical attitude on his responsibility for his product. And that's why I'm also proud to be the boss and owner of the Link Company. Let's look into the modern joint replacement, present challenges of implant quality, new and future challenges, price quality controversies, and manufacturers' view on regulatory scopes. Casting, forgings, and bar stock are ordered or are got into the company by these 5 steps. First, we have to define our requirements. Then we look at the supplier of material, for instance, and we check whether the supplier's certificate meet our requirements. Then we purchase, and following delivery, we do our own evaluation, chemical analysis. And if all specifications are met, material is released into production. Of course, measurement values are checked. Many other things are checked. And this shows you, for instance, I have my own casting company in Berlin, which casts cobalt chrome, titanium, stainless steel. And this is from the casting company for the first optical control. And you see, we have rules where to look, especially which parts of implants are under special stresses, special loads, in danger of breakage or whatever. And these are mentioned in rules which we give out to our workmen. And when they control, they know exactly, we have to look here at the stem in this area. This is very important. Or we have to look in the inside of the femoral component in this area, especially. And what we also do, this is a test or an X-ray control. Every part which we cast, for instance, is X-rayed in a batch, but the batch is numbered. So if something happens with one part, we can go back to our X-ray file and say, this part. Now let's look, is there anything to see? Did we miss anything? Then we also test several times a year our machinery. For instance, these casted parts are hipped, hot isostatic pressing. And the pressing unit is a very special setup, a special machinery, and we have to check, does it work properly? In order to do that, we put artificial defects here, for instance, in cobalt chrome distal femur components, or here, artificial gas defects in titanium components. And then we hip, and afterwards it has to look like this. The voids have to be compressed. So this is done, let's say, 2-3 times a year to find out if the procedures are working properly. Another test, very well known, is the crack detection with fluorescent dye test. So things which cannot be seen optically very well, especially in metal parts. These parts are covered in a fluorescent dye, and under ultraviolet light, one can find out or can see defects which are not found otherwise. Polyethylene. All the polyethylene worldwide, the medical polyethylene, comes from one company, Celanese. And then it's distributed to suppliers like Mitsubishi and others. And we get the polyethylene from these suppliers. What do we check? We check the measurements, we check the cleanliness. And here you see how they do it, how Celanese does the diversion of the different kinds of polyethylene. Here's the polymerization of the poly, and one track goes into industrial grade general industry poly. The other track with special purification and as a special medical implant grade powder goes into the direction of the health industry. So one cannot just buy poly. It could be or would be probably just the industrial grade. That's no good. We want the purification of the poly material. And here a comparison of the essential requirements for poly medical grade. These are all requirements for medical grade poly. It starts with the quality management system, the change management, traceability, purity. For instance, calcium stearate, which is used in industrial polyethylene, is not allowed in the medical grade. The biocompatibility has to be all right. So it's a different table of rules for medical grade poly. Now, when we produce or develop something new, how do we look at the material? An implant must be chosen according to its physical and implant material, according to its physical and biochemical characteristic, depending on its best performance for a specific requirement. This is sometimes from some manufacturing company put aside in spite of the fashion. You may be, some of you remember, there was a fashion, a titanium hype or a ceramic hype. Companies tried to do or to produce prostheses just because they were so popular, the materials, and they were in reality not really the best materials for the use. This is a table which shows you that even within the basic materials like titanium, copper chromium, polyethylene, there are a number of undergroups like wrought, cast, and so on. And this is one table where we got approval in a specific regulatory jurisdiction. Now, in general, titanium and their alloys are excellent for cementless hip stems and direct bone contact components, but not as good for wear partners. Cobalt chrome alloys are excellent for cemented stems and are, if highly polished, good wear partners for poly. Aluminum oxide ceramics are excellent wear partners for poly or ceramic counterparts. And the poly, again, is divided in traditional poly, highly cross-linked poly, and alpha tocopherol or vitamin E doped, which was much later introduced, but which is nowadays a very popular poly because the vitamin E grabs the free radicals, the oxygen, and at least prolongs the life, to be careful in statements, prolongs the life of the poly. Oh, come on. Now, but these are not iron rules. Are titanium stems only non-cemented? This is the general rule. Titanium, hips from titanium, non-cemented. Hips from copper chromium or stainless steel, cemented. Basically, yes, but it depends. When we look at the young modulus, cortical bone, 20 gigapascal, cement 2 gigapascal, titanium 110, copper chromium 230. The rule is that the flexural stiffness of a system is defined mechanically as the product of Young's modulus and the geometrical moment of inertia of the diameter around the bending axis. What does that mean? Sounds very complicated, but you see a cylindrical rod of 10 millimeters. Titanium, E module, 110 gigapascal. We load it with 1000 Newton, and the maximal deformation is 6 millimeters, like you see here. 6 millimeter deformation with a load of 1000 Newton. E module 110. Now, when we do the same thing with the same rod, 10 millimeter, with cobalt chromium, you see that the deformation is only half of it, 3.5 millimeters. Same load, same size, but 3.5 millimeter. But now, we increase the size of the titanium rod only by 19%. Still 110 gigapascal, still 1000 Newton, and the deformation is the same as the cobalt chromium rod. So in other words, if the size is right, you can also use titanium for cemented stems. That is something many surgeons, when we do it as a custom made, for instance, and we provide titanium stems for cementing, the surgeon tells us, no, titanium cannot be cemented. Wrong. If the size is good, you can cement it, but the size has to be fit to the necessity to protect the cement. So let's remember the flexural stiffness of a system is defined mechanically as a product of Young's modulus and the geometrical moment. This means that an increase in diameter of about 19% is already sufficient to achieve the same flexural stiffness in a titanium stem as in a slightly thinner cobalt chromium stem. Stem thickness is important. This is also very important to tell the surgeon. There are always surgeons, some surgeons had a bad breakfast maybe. Here's a patient. Now I use a thin stem that's easier to introduce. And later there is a loosening. You need the largest possible stem intramedullary to protect and to give a good support for the cement layer. Now, what do we do when we produce a new knee system? We do range of motion analysis, word test, particle analysis, compatibility test, roughness measurement, minimum thickness measurement, and of course, biocompatibility. Here, a view how these tests are done. There are not only 1 or 2 or 3 machines. No, 6 pieces have to be tested to give a statistical acceptable answer. A snapshot on a test for a new knee. Actually, I asked my engineers, how many tests did we do to develop this new LSK knee system? And they showed me the tests, 32 comprehensive tests, including implant design test, instrument test, usability and coating test. So 32 tests, that is quite a lot, but it is necessary to be sure to have a good feeling. For instance, when we have when we test a new stem, we don't do only the ISO 72064, the test which is necessary for a hip stem, but I always want to see the so-called Locati runout test. The Locati test means we step up with our testing until the implant fractures. From that, I get the information, how strong is that? Is it only a little bit about the requirement, or is it a long way about the requirement? I want to know that. Now, something new technology, 3D printing. Everybody talks about it. Our machine, that's what you can do with 3D printing, little trees and towers and everything. And this is one of the very large pelvis replacement, which we did for a patient, I think, in Romania, just as an example. Now, how do I get my 3D printing approved? And that is a little bit a problem. If we have a regulatory authority which goes only by standards, I really have a problem. There are no standards, but there are technical standards within the which are not official ISO or ASTM standards, but which are standards from knowledge, from history. That's why I put here, don't try to reinvent the wheel. So when we look at a new development, a new material, first we should look at the chemical purity. Second, at the physical values. Third, are the same mechanical strengths inherited? And if those things fit, you can already be quite sure that you have a product which will work properly. Of course, difference in product design must consider complementary approaches. 3D print requires hip treatment. 3D print must include the parallel production of tensile bars. So we check every batch. Does it have the correct physical properties? No. And of course, if new structures are produced with a new technology like 3D printing, cleaning procedures have to be found and tested in order to eliminate the debris remainder from the powder application. This 3D printing, you probably all know it, that's a powder, usually titanium, could also be cobalt chromium. It comes down like a little bit of rain, and then comes the electron beam and melts it together to the shape of the product. But a lot of this powder stays within the product, and we have to be sure to get these debris out of the product. Otherwise, can you imagine when the patient has such a product in his hip or in his knee, and a little piece of titanium comes into the sliding area? This would be catastrophic. So what do we do? How do we go about? We at Link approach this with view of the known procedures to clean similar rough surfaces like plasma spray. And then we compare our results with already approved products. Now, lower prices, same quality, excessive price deterioration, exaggerate pressure for price reduction, can also do some bad things on implants, on products. We have experienced that. We know this from some markets where low price products are in the market. Like similar or comparable, couple decades ago in the automotive industry, they reduced the quality and the cars were of no good quality, but the customers pushed the manufacturers back to a high quality. Of course, it has to reflect in the prices. Or unavailability of necessary products. If the prices are too low, we see this in Germany now in the present pharma market. Some pharma products, especially for children, which have low prices due to the pressure of the social systems, went down. What did the pharmaceutical companies do? They look, where can we get it? From India, from China. Okay, and now, you know all, we have a special political situation in the world. The supply stopped. Now we don't have these products in Germany. This can also happen with medical technical products if the prices are not adequate. There are lots of ways to reduce production costs that might lower quality. And that's what we don't want. And I just give you a couple examples here. This is, this is of course a competitor knee. And you can see, when you see the large picture, that this knee still has a cast skin. You can see it by this line, because that is where the two parts of the die came together. When you see this on a raw part, you can be sure the cast skin is still present. We at Link, we reduce 100% all the cast skin. This is the rule, even in areas which are not prone to fracture. Or in a very small number of poly parts, you can find extraneous matter particles that can only be detected under strong through light. These particles are rare, but should not go in circulation. Here is an enlargement. You see this particle. It's not on the surface. It's somewhere in the middle of the product. And we see it with a strong through light. And this, of course, is scrap. Now, back to the regulative challenges. NDR regulation has not improved patients' protection to our belief very much. A number of rarity product lines have been discontinued. Manufacturers may be hesitant to enter markets with too high demanding entry burden. New product development are driven to markets where regulatory approval and achievable prices are in a well-balanced relationship. And this is also a big problem in regulatory. Some of the regulatory authorities, either they are unsure about a thing or they want to be popular and show that they protect the patients even more, like it happened in Europe. They increase the bureaucracy. And the increase of the bureaucracy does not improve the products. Of course, it may avoid this thing. There was a criminal act with the French PIP breast prosthesis, where they used cheap industrial silicone. This could be reduced, but in general, the bureaucracy does not improve the quality. Now, here we have an overview of the regulatory requirements, the authorities in the EU, notified bodies, government authority, in the USA, government authority, and in Brazil, government authority. And the registration requirement, we see here, different papers, different rules for registration requirement. Contact the authority. Free choice of notified body in any EU country. So we could go to any notified body, but of course we have our special notified bodies that know us, that audit us. So we have a certain relationship, and that I think makes much sense. It gives a better understanding. We can have discussions about implementation of requirements which are possible. FDA, language English, meeting can be scheduled. Discussion about implementation of requirements is possible. Here we have a little bit of problem with ANVISA. Language Portuguese. Internationally, it is English. Meetings can be scheduled, but only in Portuguese. Of course, we have people who work here who speak Portuguese, but if ANVISA wants to comply a little bit with the international rules, with the international requirements, they should also work in English. And discussion about implementation of requirements are, of course, possible, but again, we have to use Portuguese. Now, specific requirements here in the EU, official language of each country, but we can use English. Also, we have 26 countries with different 26 languages in the EU. USA, only English language, and Brazil, Portuguese language, registration number and label. Timeline for registration currently at least 12 to 18 months. This is terrible. They are loaded with requirements. They are loaded in the EU with new applications, so 12 to 18 months. USA, very nice, very strict timeline for response within 3 months. The US FDA has to answer at least not give an approval, but they have to answer our submission. So we get an answer and then we can go from there. And now I learned that in Brazil, you also have such a rule, whether it's always fulfilled, I'm not sure, but you have a strict, you have a rule where you should get the answer. Now, publicly available information, the regulation available in several languages in the EU, the guidance document mainly in English. In the US, regulation guidance document and training documents available in English. And in Brazil, regulation in Portuguese, not easy to find for a foreign manufacturer. Recognized standards in the EU, most ISO and ASTM, harmonized standards and common specification in the US, most ISO and ASTM, and also in Brazil, most ISO and ASTM are recognized. So what can you do to adequately control implant quality and best protect the patient? Use existing technical standard rules, not necessarily ISO ASTM if we are talking about new technologies, but then discuss between the engineers what is technical standard in daily use. Control development and manufacturing and test documentation, regularly audit the implant manufacturers, check product labels, marketing materials, and user manuals. Establish a national register, very important. The Swedish register and the European registers has shown and pointed out which products work very well and which product might have a problem. Set up an EndoCert program to certify hospital surgeons according to latest scientific data and specialty centers for joint replacement. This is also very important because the implant is at the most 60% of the deal in a joint replacement. At least half is what the surgeon does, his knowledge and his ability. And this we do in Germany with the EndoCert program. Hospitals are certified, they have undergone a special training, and this gives a certain security. So, what not helpful is regular product recertification of established grandfather products. This is something which we have to do now in the EU. Products which are a long time on the market, we have to recertify. Request for clinical data for established products, like recertifying aspirin. Does it make sense? Full certification for marginal products, sidelines, custom products. Increased bureaucratic workload doesn't bring us any further, as I said before. So in summary, medical device submissions in Brazil are not easy to handle. Good communication with distributors is essential for success. Ideas for improvement, acceptance of complete implant system submissions, more publicly available information, meetings in Portuguese and English. Proud to be part of the medical device market in Brazil. Looking forward to further submissions. Thank you very much.
Parabéns, Dr. Helmut.
Congratulations, Dr. Helmut Link, for your presentation. Do you hear me? Can you hear the English translation? Do you hear the English translation? Yes? Testing, testing. This is the English channel. 1, 2, 3. Can you hear the English translation? Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. This is the English channel. Do you hear me? Yes? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Excellent. All right, so I'm going to speak in Portuguese. Right, Dr. Helmut Link, congratulations on your presentation. I believe that for us here in Brazil and at this event, it's such an honor and privilege to have you here doing this presentation about orthopedic implants and about all the requirements and what the company Valdemar Link and the group does to meet all the safety and efficacy requirements. Also, you know, the challenges that there are in the world, because each regulator, besides having common requirements, they also have specific requirements. So this is a challenge for all companies in general. And so your experience and your sharing of implant development really enriches our conversation. Considering that scenario and all the challenges that we have, we know that orthopedic implants, and the majority of them, are based on technical standards for raw materials and processes. And you have mentioned the challenge for non-standardized implants, and we have that for several types of implants. So thinking from the standpoint of regulators, because we receive some criticism about, you know, their accepting our submissions, I would like to ask you the following question so that we can learn from you, because we're here really to, you know, share knowledge and learn. So what would be your suggestion regarding the submission of documents to actually prove to regulatory authorities and ANVISA these cases of non-standardized orthopedic implants? We know that a lot of protocols are created by the company itself. So what do you think would be something that the agencies could do to make this comproval of efficacy and safety standards easier?
Thank you. First of all, I hope I'm not understood. Whenever there is a standard, use the standard. I only point at developments or at products where standards are not applicable. And a good example is this 3D printing. Now, what I showed in one of my slides is, what do we have to look at? Is the material biocompatible? We don't really, we can see this also in standards. So if the 3D printing material complies with the biocompatibility standard, fine. But now we come to the physical strength of the material. That could be different. So if we could prove, we as a manufacturer or another manufacturer could prove that the mechanical data fits or compares to wrought titanium or to casted titanium acceptable, then also it is not written in a standard. This should be accepted from that view. So that's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean. The engineers know about physical strengths and about surfaces and about these things. And when they have a new production technique and they view step by step every parameter, and the parameter is similar to what has already been done with a standardized material, the solution must be, it's okay.
Não, tá funcionando? Tá, né? Então, só
Right.
para esclarecer, a gente tem
I just wanted to clarify that we have been accepting in the case of ANVISA. I think the biggest challenge that we have, based on what we see, you know, based on what you presented and everything, that a lot is done in the plant. And so the challenge is to kind of transcribe what's done in the manufacturer so that we can present that in a document. Because based on our experience, we know that there is a lot of care regarding the manufacturing of medical devices. And maybe, you know, the translation of that quality language that is used in the manufacturer is difficult, you know, to translate that to the regulatory authorities. And so the goal is actually, like you said, to present something that has quality for the final user. So to complement those challenges, and based on your resume, you showed us the experience in 3D printing. So what do you think is the biggest challenge regarding the manufacturing of implants through 3D printing? Is it the process? Is it the raw material used? How to prove, especially considering customized products that sometimes, you know, are made, there's only just one single part that is produced, and some of the tests are not conducted because it's not viable. So how would be the whole process, and what could we do to offer like a solution or a suggestion? What is your take on that?
You have to know the procedures. You have to learn how the procedures work. And the one point you mentioned, what is the biggest challenge in 3D printing? It's, to my belief, it's a cleaning to get out the debris. And that's why we try to go parallel to our experience, for instance, with plasma spray. Plasma spray is also something where particles are brought on a surface, and where you have pores where these particles can hide. So that's the same thing with the 3D printing. And when you compare, and then when you go deeper into this and count, and maybe even what the Americans did, they asked us, compare your 3D printed component with a competitor component. We did that, which was already approved in the US. And we have the same counting of particles. The resolution is, it's okay.
certo. Eu não recebi aqui nenhuma pergunta.
Excellent. We did not receive any questions through the app. Let me see if we have questions from the audience.
Não?
Any questions?
Eu acho que precisa ser no microfone.
We need you to speak in the microphone. Good afternoon. So the process of receiving purchase materials to 3D printing follows the same purchase processes for materials purchased in blocks or in bars?
No, of course not. That is a different type of material. A block or a bar can be checked differently than the 3D powder. Here you have to audit a special supplier. You have to check whether this goes along with the requirements the machine manufacturer tells you, and where you can be sure that you can produce the parts you want to have with this material, and then you have to stay with that supplier. And of course, from time to time, you have to do these checks again. But it's more difficult with the 3D material than with bars or blocks or something like that.
Alguém mais? Acho que não.
Any other questions? So, Dr. Helmut Link, thank you so much again for your presentation and for answering our questions.
The next meeting that is held with us, we are going to speak in English with you.
And I have a question to you. Can we in the next meeting maybe also talk in English?
For sure. It was what I was saying to you. We are going to speak in English the next meeting.
Very good. Thank you
For
very
sure.
much.
Thank you.
Agradecemos a conversa e os esclarecimentos do senhor Helmut Link e da Priscila.
I'd like to thank Helmut Link and Priscilla Consigliero for their participation. So now moving on to our last panel, which talks about the validation of tests for coated implants. So I would like to invite Marcia Ribeiro from the Coordination of Implanted Materials at ANVISA. And we would also like to invite on the stage Mr. Patrick Aldinger, Senior Manager of Hip Development Products from Smith Nephew in the USA. Thank you.